Now, more than 70 pro-Palestinian protesters were arrested at Columbia University on Wednesday after demonstrating in part of the main library. This comes as temperatures continue to rise on U.S. campuses, with international student visas being revoked and some even facing arrest and having been arrested. One such case is that of detained Tufts student Rümeysa Öztürk, a constituent of Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. The House Democrats spoke to Michel Martin shortly after visiting her in an ICE detention center in Louisiana.
Thanks, Christiane. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, thank you so much for talking with us.
Of course, good to be with you again.
Congressman, you and a small group of other lawmakers recently traveled to the Immigration Detention Center in Louisiana. How did that trip come about?
Well, first, let me just say I've long done work in the criminal legal reform space. So I've visited our carceral settings throughout my nearly 7 years in Congress, prisons, jails, detention facilities. And the moment that Rümeysa Öztürk, my Somerville constituent, a Tufts graduate student, was kidnapped in broad daylight. I mean, she was, this was during Ramadan. She was on her way to an iftar to break her fast, so, hungry. And she was, physically accosted by plainclothes, masked men. She had recently been doxxed, and so she thought this had something to do with her having been doxxed. Then she is, taken away, handcuffed, later shackled, and then taken some 1,000+ miles away, defying a judge's order, denied her constitutional rights of due process, charged with no crime. Disappeared from the Somerville community and her neighbors and ripped away from her life. Simply for co-authoring an op-ed that centered the humanity of the Palestinian people. And so since I've long done the work of oversight of our carceral settings, once she was kidnapped and ostensibly a political prisoner, I knew I would find my way to rural Louisiana.
How is she doing?
I was stunned by the way in which she was comporting herself in the midst of this. She shared stories of her own experience and that of the other women that she's detained alongside with, of just inadequate medical care. Rümeysa is a asthma sufferer. She uses 2 medications a day to treat her asthma. And because she was denied due process, she was abducted across state lines 1,000+ miles away from her home without those essential medications. So she had suffered several severe asthma attacks while being confined at the Basile detention facility in rural Louisiana. Inadequate medical care, limited religious accommodation, and in fact, a nurse removed her hijab without consent. Sleep deprivation, frigid temperatures. The thing that I was most struck by with Rümeysa is that she knew we were there for her, but she made no appeals on her behalf except to ask for our prayers for her. She spent the time advocating for the other women. And because she is a graduate student and a qualified researcher, she came to that meeting with copious notes that she had taken of awful stories of women that are in this facility that are battling breast cancer and not receiving adequate treatment, of pregnant women in this facility that are not receiving the essential prenatal care that they need, of near miscarriages. So she spent the lion's share of that time advocating for others. And she also said that as someone who has traveled the globe and worked with refugees, that she was in shock that a facility like this even existed in our country.
You've said repeatedly that she was kidnapped. We saw that she was physically accosted. The Trump administration has said, or let's say this, the Department of Homeland Security, commenting on the arrest itself, has been claiming that she, quote, engaged in activities in support of Hamas, unquote. How do you respond to that? What do you think that means?
Because she was denied her constitutional rights and there was no due process. There's no evidence of wrongdoing. She's been charged with no crime. Whatever assertions they maintain, had she been provided with her day in court, then they could have presented those findings. But again, all she did is co-author an op-ed centering the humanity of Palestinian people. And wherever you fall on that issue, I mean, it's my belief that our destinies are inextricably tied, Americans, Israelis, and Palestinians. But wherever you fall on that, you cannot deny her right to say what she believes. That is just a matter of free speech. And in every person of conscience, again, even if you disagree with her, you should support her right to say it, because that is just fundamental to who we are as Americans. And every person of conscience should find what happened to Rümeysa Öztürk chilling.
The administration's argument that they have made without reservation is that non-citizens have different standards of due process. I mean, the president has made that clear in his opinion. Secretary of State has made that clear. Representatives from Homeland Security have insisted that non-citizens have different level of due process rights. So could you explain why you say that people should care about this? Because this could happen to anybody.
Well, and Donald Trump's interpretation of the Constitution and our laws is, wildly inaccurate and actually unlawful. And that is why our best defensive strategies has been litigation in the courts, because this has never been about law and order. This has never been about immigration. This has been about power and control. The Trump administration and their anti-freedom agenda that wants to control what you write in an op-ed, what books you read, and what you do with your own body. And so when I say that everyone should care about this, I think people of conscience, anyone who calls this country home, should care about those constitutional rights to due process for any person who calls this country home. And her rights were violated. But moreover, she's been charged with no crime. And if her only so-called crime is having co-authored an op-ed centering the humanity of all people, then this could be anyone.
Let me just point out that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has invoked the Immigration and Nationality Act, which he says gives him the authority to deport an alien whose, quote, presence or activities could have serious foreign policy consequences for America, unquote. The argument seems to be that these demonstrations that some people have participated in, or perhaps Rümeysa Öztürk's op-ed, I don't know, has serious foreign policy consequences. So for people who think that that could be true, what do you say?
Even if you disagree with what someone is saying or writing, or a position that they've taken, you have to, as a person of conscience, as anyone who calls this country home, as an American, affirm their right to say it. It's just free speech. And so this is a frightening foundational floor that is being set. And as I said, a bellwether of things to come. And that's why I have been so encouraged by the public outcry, the number of people who have rallied, who have lobbied, who have applied pressure. I want people to know that, a dictator like Donald Trump, what they want is a citizenry that is ignorant and uninformed. They want a citizenry that is indifferent to the suffering of their neighbors. And they want a citizenry that's inactive. And when it comes to my constituent, Rümeysa Öztürk, being kidnapped and now a political prisoner, I've been heartened by the fact that people have been informed about her rights. They have not been indifferent, and they have been very active in their mobilization.
What's the next step here, though? What is the next step here?
We're in regular communication with her legal counsel, and a judge has ordered that she be removed from Louisiana and that she be moved to Vermont. And again, she was taken to Louisiana on purpose. It is one of the most highly incarcerated states in the country. And what I heard from many women that are detained there is that they often cannot get legal counsel, because if you call someone and say that you're at Bazille, a detention facility in Louisiana, they will hang up on you, because the chances are so bleak that you will have a fair process and that you will be able to be freed. And so from the very beginning, what we've been advocating for is for Rümeysa to be free, and for her student visa, which was revoked, to be reinstated. We're encouraged by this recent ruling by the judge for her to be moved from Louisiana to Vermont. And we'll see if the Trump administration honors the judge's ruling.
As a candidate for this second term, the president made it very clear that he wanted to have a mass deportation regime. Many people sounded the alarm then, including yourself. But overall, do you think the Democrats are offering an alternative, a credible alternative to what the president and his administration are doing?
I'll tell you the way I see it. I believe Democrats have often operated with scared power, and scared power isn't power at all. Now, Donald Trump has made it very plain that he wants the power. He wants to amass the power. He wants to wield the power. Hell, he wants to abuse the power, which is why we went to rural Louisiana, because we can't allow those abuses to go unchecked. We can't operate as if this dark dystopian view that Donald Trump has for this country is an inevitability. So we have to resist and reject it at every single turn. And you do see Democrats doing that. I'm certainly doing that. And I think as important as it is that we blunt the harms of this administration, we still have to be intentional about an affirmative vision, because the most compelling argument cannot be we're not Donald Trump. We have to affirm who we are. And so what I see and hear from people in the community every day is that they don't want us to moderate our aspirations, that they want us to do everything possible to protect them in this moment. So Democrats have employed this defensive strategy of litigation, legislation, agitation, and mobilization. And every time I say legislation, people say, but you all are in the minority, what can you do? Well, first of all, we only need 3 or 4 Republicans of conscience to actually vote with us, and we can stop a lot of this harm. And then more recently, we have a discharge petition, which forces a vote in the House. So that would force our Republican colleagues to go on the record. This discharge petition is called Hands Off Medicaid and SNAP. They keep saying that there's no plans to cut Medicaid or to cut SNAP, which is fake news, because there's no way that you can do $1 trillion in cuts and not cut critical safety net programs that are a lifeline to people. It's impossible. And in fact, the Congressional Budget Office, which is an independent entity here, has confirmed that. So our strategy is to make them wear it. And then secondly, we have to continue to make an affirmative case. That's why I'm not going to stop fighting for universal child care, for paid leave, for reparations. People want us to advance policies that go as far and as deep as the hurt. And that's how Democrats win. We don't win when we communicate in slide decks while Republicans are communicating in headlines. We win when people know what we're doing for them because they feel the impact every day.
How do you understand the fact that, at least as far as the polling is concerned, people aren't giving Democrats high marks either? And in fact, in some of the town halls, constituents have been really angry. They feel like the Democrats aren't fighting hard enough.
Yeah, again, one of the reasons why I believe we're in this situation and why we lost is that when Democrats have had the power, when we had the trifecta, we didn't use it. It's very challenging to build the coalition and the movement that we need to get the mantle, to get the gavel back so that we can stop this harm. If they question, well, what will you do even when you have the gavel? And so that's why it's important that we're not only actively blunting the harms of this hostile Trump administration in the midst of this hostile government takeover, but also that we continue to advance and speak to an affirmative vision for this country. And I do believe that we are making strides, but none of it is going to happen quickly enough. And so whatever you offer as an elected in this moment feels like it's falling woefully short because...
Is that because Democrats are too timid?
I don't think that's about timidity. It's about the reality of the circumstance we find ourselves in, of a hostile administration that has no regard for the rule of law, for the Constitution, and has contempt for every person who calls this country home. And people, one of the things that really burns me is whenever Democrats are in the minority, I'll be asked, well, do you think there's the opportunity for anything bipartisanship? I'm like, bipartisanship? Where's the party to be bipartisan with? My House colleagues across the aisle are not operating like a party. They're operating like a cult of cowards that are being complicit in wholesale harm. If anything, people need to be more strident and specific in their grievance. It's the Republicans that refuse to have town halls and to be accountable to you. It's the Republicans in this budget reconciliation in our committee hearings that are sitting silently. It is constituents in Republican districts that are reaching out to my office because they can't get a response from their own Republican representatives. And so that's the work that we have to do in earnest right now. And that's why you see Democrats going into Republican districts and doing town halls.
And having town halls. Have you, but it is not, look, the president has made it clear and has been making it clear for some time, even before he took office, that his approach would be basically to flood the zone, right? Flood the zone. And they're doing that. I mean, executive orders about, just about everything you can imagine, as well as a very sort of comprehensive approach to governance. So given the fact that there has been this sort of aggressive push toward policymaking, do you think that Democrats have presented I guess I would say, a coherent response and one that actually meets the moment? And if not, why not? Is it just because institutionally it's just hard to do?
I mean, the thing is, this moment requires us to be nimble. As a student of history, it's been my experience and observation that every great movement requires three things: imagination, strategy, and stamina. And we need all three. We have to offer an imagination, an affirmative view for a country that is in stark contrast to Donald Trump's America. We need to be strategic, so we have to be innovative and nimble. And then we have to have the stamina for this fight. We have to litigate, we have to legislate, we have to agitate, we have to mobilize, we have to do disruptive things that we've never done before. Now, look, I occupied the House steps under the leadership of Congresswoman Cori Bush when she was here to try to stave off any, to advocate for an eviction moratorium. And then you saw recently Hakeem Jeffries and Cory Booker took to the House steps in rejection of our Medicaid cuts. You see Senator Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez doing Stop the Oligarchy tours in places like Idaho, where tens of thousands of people are showing up. You see, myself and others having traveled from El Salvador to Louisiana to visit detention facilities. We have to do things that we've never done before. We have to be disruptive. We have to be bold. We have to be unapologetic. We have to match their energy. They're flooding the zone, and we have to do the very same thing.
Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you.